Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may happen to be, and whether you're watching live or archived, and welcome to another in Nautel's Transmission Talk Tuesday webinar series. I'm your host, Jeff Welton, and we're going to have some fun today. I'm going to start this with a little caveat. For the first time in well over a year of being excessively zoomed to tears and beyond, I managed to stack two right on top of each other. So if I look a little flustered, I just walked out of one meeting and straight into another one. Yeehaw. Today, I've got two really good friends and pretty good engineers in their own right. Starting in the order shown on the screen, we've got Josh Bohn, President and CEO of the recently rebranded MaxxKonnect Group. Josh, welcome and glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
So you guys, and just to hit a little bit of history, you started as just you as a contract engineer. You added or you did used parts business and still do, I think, some parts and components. And then you've added a repair depot in Dallas, if I've got this right. And now
Yep.
you're pretty much a full coverage, full one-stop shop, so to speak.
Pretty much, yeah. We've got full equipment dealership now. Got integration services, whether it's transmitter studios, remote controls, whatever. Still have the shop in Dallas, do lots of field work. Um, the MaxxKonnect wireless stuff is really taken off, and yeah, we can pretty much solve any of your technical needs.
Very cool. So there's a running joke on one of my Facebook groups about see us for all your XXX needs. And so there you for all your technical needs.
All your
But
technical needs. We got it.
anyway, we'll be talking about MaxxKonnect a little bit. This month's turning into the Josh month. And, if you like Josh, more of them to come. If you don't like Josh, well, I'm sorry, but there's more of them to come. Anyway, we're going to be talking.
The same thing.
That's it. We're going to be talking about MaxxKonnect and other STL type solutions next week, I think, if I've got that right.
I believe you are correct, yes.
Boy, I hope so. I'm going to need a calendar at some point. Also with us today, and anybody who's a regular attendees of these webinars will know that I occasionally drag them out of the studio audience, is the handsome and talented Shane Toven. Shane has been doing radio since long before me. You started when you were like 12 years old up in Duluth?
I wandered into a community radio station at the age of 13, and it was downhill ever since.
There you go. And this is one of those things, once you get into it, it's like I tell people, they say, hey, we can't get young people to do this. And I said, all you got to do is get them bit by the bug. Once that happens, you can't get them away from it.
Oh, it's a virus.
Yep.
I told
It's
somebody
true.
that a couple weeks ago. So yeah.
So today we're talking about Snmp, and for anybody who keeps tracking, and we do get the advanced questions, and I dutifully do print them up and stick them in front of me just to try and not forget stuff, because the great thing about my mind is it's a wonderful device, and my memory is excellent, but it's about this long. And it gets shorter every year. So in the advanced questions, somebody said that Snmp is new to them and explain basics, and we will tag those briefly. But we did do an Snmp webinar. Josh, when was that? February, I think?
February, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also we've got our, of course, disembodied voice, Mr. Ed Sylvester in the background, making sure that I don't stray too far off of the ranch. He gets to herd the cats. It's a better job or a bigger job than you might assume. But also want to do the mandatory housekeeping stuff. If we do participate audience interaction as much, I see Marco Aridi's already thrown a comment in there about seeing a special, and yep, we do have a promotion going on the VS. So if you're into VS, especially HD, click on the website for that. Another one on the GV, et cetera, and so on. But we do participate or encourage participation. So there's places you can type questions, you can make comments, criticism, sarcasm, whatever your little heart desires. If it applies, I'll throw it into the conversation. If it doesn't, I'll smirk and move on. By the same token, you can, I've been hanging around Shane and his wife too long. You can tell Andrea.
Heckling.
Heckling is not only encouraged, but graded. So also you've got the little hand wavy icon. If you've got a mic and aren't feeling shy at all, then click on the hand wavy icon and we'll be happy to unmute you and make you part of the process. If you're an SBE member, this webinar, as with all Nautel webinars, qualifies for half of a recertification credit under category I of the recertification schedule. If you're not an SBE member, why not? It's also, you've got till the end of this month, I think, is the deadline for renewals. So if you got a membership and you haven't renewed it yet, get on it. I see Wayne Pacina, our president's in there. That's all my brownie points for Wayne. So on that note, let's carry on. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But we are going to talk about the acronyms, because holy smokes, we do acronyms. And I don't know about anybody else, but I don't do acronyms well. The older I get, they're supposed to make it easier for me to remember stuff, and I haven't figured out how exactly. We'll talk about the things you got to have and the gotchas. We'll talk about what fits best. And this is where it's kind of cool, because Josh, you do a lot of Burk installs, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that? Yes and no is not a viable answer here. I don't want to be doing talking all day long.
No. Yeah,
All right.
we've done quite a few large Burk installs, and it's SNMP is a critical function in especially large installs with modern transmitters, simply because instead of having a giant multi-conductor cable that you've got to wire into a bunch of screw terminals in the back of the transmitter, you plug it into the network and, you know, assign the IP address, the read-write passwords, and tell it what MIB to look at, and then you can just pick what you want. It is a beautiful thing. It simplifies the remote control and monitoring of not only transmitters, but all kinds of devices in the modern plant, to the point where, I mean, even 15 years ago, we couldn't have imagined what you just click here and add, oh, hey, that's amazing. Instead of cut, strip, crimp, twist, cut, strip, crimp, twist. So,
and I mean, even going back before, or well, around that point, if anybody remembers writing the basic macros for a Gentner or one of the original Burks, that was its own special brand of fun.
And I never learned that scripting language on purpose. So,
yeah, that was a few too many for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's now Jeff Wilson, of course, wants to know, start at the beginning. What does SNMP mean? And if I'm going to take a stab at it, and one of you guys can throw a virtual dart at me if I get it wrong, but it's simple network mapping protocol or management.
No, almost. Simple network management protocol.
Correct.
And the the funny part is, I mean, it's been around for ages. The IT industry has been using this for many, many, many years, and you know,
they're actually trying to get rid of it.
I know. Well, they're on like V3 now, and you know, version 3 of this protocol, and I think, yeah, they're finally trying to get it secure. It wasn't always the most secure protocol, but V3 has changed some of that. But anyway, yeah, that first letter is a little bit of a misnomer. Simple. It depends on your definition of simple.
It does. Well, yeah, we'll get into that in a bit too, because yeah, it can be simple or it can be as complex as you want to make it. John Van Milligan, one of Shane's former neighbors, well, Colorado's not that big a state, but John says that it's some nerds make progress.
I never heard that. That's good.
I like that.
He's not wrong. So first quick question, Josh Chesney's asked, would you advise moving away from wiring the GPIO of a transmitter?
What I typically do is, if SNMP is available, I will do all of the functions that I would normally have broken out on SNMP, but just as a safety measure, in case something happens and the only option you have to get to your remote control is dial up, your network goes down, whatever, I still wire like forward power, reflected power, and then a summary alarm and on off as a physical connection, just as a the world blew up, my switch blew up, it's dial-up time, I can't get to anything, at least then you can turn it off and make sure you're still in the air. That's the typical idea behind the way we tend to do them now.
Yeah, and my approach is very, very similar to that. Pretty much on, off, forward power, just the bare basics of discrete wiring and everything else over SNMP.
Yeah.
Yep. And I've got one customer who relies on the SNMP for everything, but what he's done, and US based, is to follow the rule. What is it? 3 hours. If you lose control, that you've got to shut it down.
Yep.
So he's got a network traffic detector with a contact closure, and that network traffic detector, when the network goes down, it fires a timed relay. 3 hours later, it mutes the transmitter.
That's okay. That's a neat approach.
Very
there's
simple.
a whole set of rules about ATS, automatic transmitter system control. And yeah, that's part of it. If you lose your control link, technically your plant is supposed to shut down. Technically.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I'm glad you emphasized technically. It's sort of like shutting off a translator when the main station goes off the air.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a gray area we won't get into.
So John mentions that he does the reset relay and uses the Nautel AUI reboot too. So yep, another purpose for a relay. Dan Mamone asked if SNMP is an option that you had to pay for. Would you?
Oh, I would.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ed, plug your ears. We got the marketing guy on here, the guy that helps set pricing. You really want to open this can of worms on this webinar?
Well, some remote control vendors already charge by number of devices, so yeah, I don't want any double dipping happening here. So,
I mean, when you think about it, though, when you go back, I mean, the old sign systems. If you wanted to control more stuff, you bought more IP8s.
Well,
that's
yeah.
true.
Well, and I mean, and then if you look at it from the flip side, there's a major television transmitter manufacturer that their default is SNMP only. And if you want the analog IO, you pay extra for that, because SNMP to a transmitter manufacturer is code. There's no physical component involved. But to have the physical logic IO, that's more stuff, that's added cost. So it's cheaper to just sell them SNMP control. It's cheaper for you. So if you charge for it, that's just kind of mean. Keep that in mind, Ed. Keep that in mind.
So now, one other thing that Andy Lowe had asked from Michigan, how would you interface SNMP? Can you interface SNMP into a transmitter site that just has a phone connection? And of course, I'm old and I'm thinking back to Tandy Model 1 Level 1 Radio Shack computer with the little hang your Northern Telecom phone up in the acoustic coupler. Wee. And I'm thinking I could make this work. But I'm sure there's something a little more elegant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the major manufacturers of remote controls that do SNMP also do still have some kind of dial-up option, whether it be DTMF, whether it be modem. And, you can certainly bridge those two worlds. You dial into the controller at the site. It does all of the SNMP communication, and then your link is just via the phone line. So, yeah, that's certainly still an option.
Good to know. All right, now we've done all this talking. We haven't even got off the introductory side. This is how we roll, folks.
This is what we do.
So basically, this is your overall structure. You got a manager looking at a bunch of agents, which could be transmitters. It could be components within a transmitter. It could be, what else could it be? Josh, you've done a couple of pretty big ones recently for TV.
Oh my. It can be transfer switch controllers, it can be temperature sensors, it can be door monitoring systems, it can be HVAC. There are so many different things that have SNMP in them. And then there are converters, because we're working on speccing a project for an industry outside of broadcast right now that will convert many of the industrial protocols like LAN and BACnet and Modbus and things like that into SNMP, so that you can integrate them into an SNMP manager. And we're working on a lot of that, and I'm forcing Micah to learn some of these industrial protocols, and I'm amazed he hasn't stabbed me yet. So they're not fun. So yeah.
Your time's coming.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Micah just needs, he'll get a little bit more of a attitude. So one of the other questions we got is what's an MIB? So an MIB is a management information base, and it's basically a list of OIDs, another acronym, object identifiers. Now, the OIDs are the critical thing because that is, you can look at an OID and know everything that you need to know about what that specific, and we'll get into that in a second or two as well. One of the other comments, do you hardwire a transmitter reset from the remote control in case the transmitter control hangs up and SNMP communication is lost? And that comes back to what I was talking about with either the network timer, or you could do it as an IP controlled switch. There's a bunch of different ways you could do that. But yes, AUI reset in our case is a feature of just about every transmitter we make if you've got current software loaded. Plug for software updates, support guys, if you're listening, you heard me say it. But absolutely, you want some method because it's a computer. Anything that involves computers and networks will lock up at some point. Josh doesn't look so sure. Maybe he's locked up.
Oh no, I'm here. I'm just listening.
but yeah, it's definitely having a system to do a hard reboot, and it comes back to your comfort level. So, like my site, we have a fiber going up the hill, and that's wonderful until somebody drives a backhoe or a bulldozer through that fiber. Because glass, the light doesn't jump the air gap really, really well. So, this is where things like MaxxKonnect or any other of the
any type of wireless any type of wireless internet connection is helpful in this regard, whether it's MaxxKonnect or satellite or anything. Just something that doesn't rely on a wireline service is critical. Right. At least to me it is. And Shane, I know you guys operate primarily wireless, so yeah.
Yeah, we have a combination. I mean, we do our own internal VSAT network, which is bidirectional satellite networking. We do LTE, we do wired internet connections. It's all wireless internet connections. It's all across the board.
Yeah. So, by all means, SNMP is awesome, but like anything else, it's only as good as the backhaul, as the path it's got to travel to get from point to point. And I mean, these days, well, dial-up is awesome, but when was the last time you found a set of or phone company that lay copper for you?
Yeah.
They're getting
on the plus side. Yeah, on the plus side, SNMP is a pretty lightweight protocol, so it doesn't take a lot of bandwidth in and of itself.
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing that's also good to know. Little side note, we were tweaking the marketing guys there before about setting pricing and stuff. So we had in-house sales meetings not too long ago, and our manager, bless his heart, is a lovely person and has wonderful intentions and actually manages to keep us motivated. So his idea of motivating us was to give us a mug.
Oh my.
And it's like get fired up and get ready to roll. But so Blair, there's my poke today, but don't fire up the transmitter in a literal sense.
I could make a QEI joke, but I won't. So
yeah, the smoke-filled room joke.
Yeah.
So, Matt Golston, yeah, carrying on the QEI. I think he was typing it as you were thinking it. So I am going to skip through the animations here.
Oh, wow, that's an old slide. Look at that.
It is. Well, I told you I borrowed the one from last week.
Yeah, you did.
Or a couple of months ago. So basically, we have the manager, which is the thing that is the central repository of information, if you will. And then we have the agents, which in this picture obviously are transmitters, but as we said before, they could be a whole bunch of, basically anything that is SNMP controllable or monitorable, if that's a word, is an agent, correct?
Yes.
So now, Shane, so we talked about a lot of the stuff, and somebody has asked how Burk deals with SNMP. William did, and so William, we will be hitting that very directly in a couple of minutes. So why don't you, Josh, don't let me forget, because you're going to be my Burk go-to guy for this.
Okay.
But so big question is how you access SNMP data from a system that has SNMP capabilities. And like a lot of times you'll see something that says SNMP enabled and then you got nothing. It's crickets after that. So what do you do?
Well,
Shane?
first thing to do, yeah, you do need something to actually gather that data, like you know, a manager, and that manager can be a piece of hardware, like a Burk remote, like an Automat remote, you know, like a Davicom remote, any of these that do have SNMP built in, and it's great to have that on site as kind of a data aggregator to send all that data back to you. But it could also be something back at the far end in your studios that's gathering that data and monitoring and managing it as well. Piece of software running out there. I mean, those who are in the IT industry may be familiar with stuff like SolarWinds, a number of the other Nagios, a number of the other packages out there, PRTG. A lot of those are great for gathering this data as well. So.
Yeah, and now the even more critical, well, I say more critical, beyond that, and so here are the pieces. Your managers do the looking, the agents retrieve the information, and the browser's just the thing that looks at it, similar to an internet browser. Beyond that, I'm going to say Jerry Olson says we've run out of letters for TLAs, so now we're using enhanced TLAs. We've gone beyond the 3-letter acronyms, and oh, trust me, I'm ex-military guy, so there were a lot of 5-letter acronyms used way back in the day.
Yeah, there were.
But so we talked earlier about how you got your MIBs, your management information base, and beyond that, the OIDs. And the OIDs, so no matter what you've got for a manager and for agents, for the devices to be controlled, if you don't have the MIB file, then you got nothing.
Right.
And that's what the first thing that will happen. Any manager is going to, if it isn't preloaded, will ask you to load the MIB or import the MIB for the devices you're monitoring. Oh, Josh, I know with the Burk, the ArcTouch Touch system, those are preloaded with a lot of our gear. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of the major transmitter manufacturers are preloaded in the Burk gear, so that's not usually a problem.
Right. And I mean, and Shane, the marketing guy, Ed, plug your ears. But you guys use a lot of Automat stuff, yeah? And I know from working
Yeah,
with Tony Peterly, they preload.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not preloaded, but it's easy enough to get those MIB file or those those MIB files from the manufacturer to load them into the software, and then off you go.
Yeah. So that part is pretty straightforward, and I know for us the MIB files, you can find them right on our website if you just go to the latest software tab under tech support and just start hitting parent until you see one that says SNMP MIB files for the folder name. Then we break it down for the MIB files for everything. And Marco mentioned the iReasoning MIB browser, and that's actually the picture I had right here is the yep. So Marco, thanks for that. That is a really good point.
That is a lifesaver if you have a manager or if you have a MIB that is written improperly.
Yes.
Yes, and that was, I did an entire TV install because the MIBs were all written in tables, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point. And the Burk MIB browser does not like tables. So I had to pluck individual OIDs out of iReasoning and plug them in to make that whole thing work. So I basically rewrote my own MIB, and that's what we used. So.
Yeah. So the iReasoning browser is great because you can hit, I'm pretty sure it's under file, but you can import the MIB for whatever piece of equipment you've got directly from your own laptop if you've downloaded it. And away you go as far as being able to scroll through it and see what all the different commands are. So the function, everything up to the 5 digits that represents the company is pretty much going to be the same for what we do for broadcast. I mean, we don't do a whole lot of experimental or security stuff. There will be some SNMP v2, and that's one of the things that you're going to see going down the road changing with us. Right now, we support version 1 on everything and version 2 on most of the current software, and it'll be selectable at some point. which
Okay.
because as we add for V3 with the enhanced security. So that's there you go, sneak peek that I probably wasn't supposed to tell you. Pretend you didn't hear it, and we'll bleep it out of the recording or something.
That will be redacted. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
One quick note here, Jeff. Speaking of Snmp and security, this is not a protocol you want to run over the public internet.
Right.
No, just don't.
Well, and so version 1 was wide open. There is no security whatsoever.
Right.
Version 2, there is some minimal read-write security with password protection, but it's very basic. It's like
All
8
plain
characters.
text.
It's all plain text, and it's just flying ASCII text back and forth. It's just authenticating, hey, I'm supposed to talk to you. So yeah.
So, I mean, my basic rule of thumb is treat your SNMP system the way you treat your automation system. I'm pretty sure most people don't run their program over audio. Most people shouldn't run their program audio over public IP.
Shodan much?
Yeah.
Jeff, do you still do your nightly Shodan search?
Weekly, but yeah. So
Okay.
for those who are unaware, there's this website called Shodan.io. I'm not going to spell it. If you can't figure it out from there, you shouldn't be playing with it. But I said that out loud. I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a Internet of Things browser, so you can go in and you can type different device names as an example. You can type Nautel and you'll find usually 2 or 3 devices, most of them through Burk ArcTouchPluses that somebody put on the internet and didn't firewall or hide behind a VPN. And for the most part, then we're segueing off SNMP, but not really, because internet security factors very tightly to this.
Yes.
For the most part, these have had at least the default username and password changed. But my argument is that if I can see it at all, then it's an invitation for hacking. Because if somebody can see it, then I'd say, oh, I wonder if this lets me in. Oh, I wonder if this lets me in. Or they could brute force it, or.
Yeah.
So, it's a huge argument for VPNs, or at the very least, a virtual network console, something that makes it, more anonymous.
Right, and somebody having access to SNMP on your gear is almost even worse than them having web access or telnet access, because you can do a lot of things with these SNMP commands that you couldn't otherwise do from any other interface.
Yeah.
So it can actually do some physical damage in some cases.
Yeah, it does depend on the gear, but like in here, if you know what you're doing, I mean, you can actually go in and change drive bias.
Yeah.
You could theoretically bias the amplifiers to the point that you blow all the amplifiers out of a transmitter.
Yeah.
Now, we do tend to lock that stuff down fairly well, but it's there. So yeah, exactly. Plug it up. So commands are pretty basic, and this is probably the coolest thing about SNMP. The hardest part is wrapping your head around the MIBs and the OIDs and the TLAs, the 3-letter acronyms. But once you've gotten past that part of it, the commands are pretty easy. You got get, walk, set, trap, inform. And for the most of us, very little do we use inform. It's mostly get, set, and trap.
Mm-hmm.
Get means go look at this and tell me what it says. Set means, hey, make this do this. And trap means, let me know if something goes sideways. That's it in a nutshell right there. Did I miss anything critical?
No.
Oh, that's pretty much it.
I love it when they shake their heads no. It means I was paying attention the last time Shane told me about this stuff, or Josh. So how do we make it work? Okay, well, the ports are consistent, yeah?
Yeah. Typically, yeah.
So now, Josh, say you're going in to a site, you're putting in a Burk, and I'm going to pick on you a little because your Burk slides are coming up next too. But you're going in, you got a Nautel transmitter sitting there, and you got a Burk ArcTouchPlus, and you need to make the two talk.
Mm-hmm.
What's your basic process for that?
Well, in the SNMP configuration of the transmitter, you make sure that your ports are set. You change your passwords from public and private because that's what they typically default to. And
can I make the password admin?
Make it happy one, Jeffy. Happy one. That's that. Yeah. It has to have a number in it. That's the default security. And go in. I typically don't use traps. I usually end up letting the manager determine when there's a problem. That's just a personal preference. I know lots of other people that do use traps. That's just something that we've never done because the managers that we typically work with, whether it's Burk or something else, have an alarm function built into them. So we use that way. Then, once that's set, that's really all you need to do on the transmitter itself. And and determine the IP. Actually, no, you don't even need the IP on a Nautel. You only do if you're doing traps.
So
right.
Just to clarify this for me to make sure I got this straight. So a lot of managers can query for alarms using the get command to say, hey, what's the status of this? Versus the piece of gear firing a trap or sending basically a push notification that, hey, there's an alarm.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's basically pull versus push. Your manager can either query the device and query those OIDs to say, okay, is this between this and this set points or set limits? If so, okay, everything's good. If not, okay, let me know somehow. We actually do use traps quite a bit because they don't take a lot of bandwidth to fire those off, and we have some limited bandwidth connections. So typically in our case, there's a manager on site, like an Automat remote control. It queries the devices, and then it sends traps back to headquarters so that the alarms can show up in the NOC and they can take action on it.
Because Shane, the Automat can function as a manager and an agent, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and that's one of the unique features. There aren't a lot of devices that can do that, but that's handy, especially in the case of EMF, because the Automat has the ability to get all of the notifications and talk SNMP to the transmitter and the other devices, but it also can function as an agent, so the NOC can keep an eye on it using SNMP and whatever the aggregator they're using. What aggregator are you using at the NOC? Is it
so we got some custom in-house software that we wrote to aggregate all of those alarms and display them. We were using a package from Automat, but that package was retired, unfortunately. So now we're using and we're always looking at other options as well. So, but yeah, for now we've got all those traps going into a custom system that just displays them in the NOC.
Nice. Okay.
So, question for Alex, or actually, I'm going to hit Shane with this. Alex asked if it's possible to adjust the agent port. So, can you change the agent port? And if so, would it be advisable to do so as a small layer of security?
You can, but in some cases that will actually break it, because it depends on the device. Some of them have that have that port hard coded. I mean, it expects SNMP to be on specific ports, and you can't change it. So unless you have a specific reason to change that port, I don't recommend it.
That's the kind of information that's good to know. So moving a step forward, it's funny that you'd mentioned Passler before, and PRTG is one of the ones that I use on my own stuff quite a bit, just because it's, I mean, it'll handle up to 100 connections on the free version, and they don't restrict between commercial, private, or non-commercial use. They just don't care. You can look at 100 commercial for whatever reason you want. If you want to get more than that. Now, having said that, if you want to add meters and stuff, it gets a little kludgy. And for somebody who's somewhat technically impaired like me, that can be a challenge. So, like Josh, I know you've done a lot of work with Burk, and of course the ArcTouchPlus Touch, you just basically grab and drop. Is that not correct? How do you set up the interface?
The interface isn't difficult. I mean, there's you add the device through a drop down with the IP and the passwords for the SNMP, and then after that, as long as you've got the MIB, you can just add them as metering channels. You copy the OID or pick it from the drop down. If it can read the MIB correctly, you pick it from the drop down and just add it as a metering or status or command channel. And it's very simple. And then you would map it the same as you would any analog connection into the remote control.
Yeah, right. And Automat's approach is very similar. They have a piece, they use their piece of software called ScriptEasy, and you just basically drop what you want in your interface there and then link it to the appropriate areas of the script where you've connected to those OIDs.
Shane, you've got a little bit of PRTG experience, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And you've also, I know your past life, you've done some PRSS related work, public radio stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Nemitz has asked, I've been using PRTG for years to monitor a few microwave links successfully, but having trouble using it to monitor the new PRSS ATX SDS receivers. PRSS is published password user and pass for SNMP, and a little unsure where it needs to be used. So who do you talk to for that? PRSS, ATX, PRTG, or somebody else?
So I would get a hold of PRSS. They should be able to supply you not only the MIB for the receiver, but also the community names that you'll need to put in into your into PRTG, for instance, to actually monitor those things. So.
Cool. All right, let's see. And XDS, John Van Milligan mentions that XDS is only SNMP version 3, so that's also something definitely worth noting.
Yep.
Because
and not every manager supports V3 at this point. So
yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of.
I want to say that PRTG does have an SNMP V3 console, but I don't think it's the same one. And I could be wrong on that. I definitely looked that up.
Most people have stuck to V2 just because it's simpler, but yeah, V3 is really kind of the direction I think we're going to see a lot of these going at some point in the future, just going forward.
Well, and it's the same deal as we were talking about before with admin not being a password or password not being a password. You really end up balancing the security against the ability to use it. I mean, the 100% secure system is the one that nobody can access. I'm going to grab him from the audience because he'd sent me an email before and provided me with a whole bunch of ideas and thoughts and concepts. And of course, being running too many webinars and not having nearly as many brain cells as I should have to do what I need to do, because I rely on smart people like you. But we're going to open John's microphone. John Van Milligan, we'd been talking, and in your email, you suggested a few things too related to this. Let's see if we caught him by surprise.
Is this on? I think
you're there.
I'm there. Okay. No, you try to work on my brain cells. What was the comments?
Now you're going to make me look up the email. But and you'd made another comment about the V3, because you guys have done quite a bit of SNMP stuff as well.
Oh yeah. We've done once we got the Burk whatever they call their SNMP plugin. When we first tried that, we go, hey, this is great. And so our first few VS transmitters were with all the relay wires and everything, and after that we were just putting in just the SNMP connection, and then found out that the AUI locks up, so we had to add one more relay connection to it. Waiting for the firmware upgrade, but
give me both.
Yeah, we had one contract engineer and one of our older engineers who retired a few years back, putting in a brand new VS 300, and I had everything programmed up on the remote control. I said, just plug in this one connection, interlock on the D connector, and they kept on calling me. He said, okay, how do we hook up the remote control? I said, just plug in that Ethernet connection. Okay, what turns it on and off? Just that Ethernet connection. And it took several calls from their mountaintop on their cell phone until they finally realized, yes, I have full control. I see everything. See, I can turn it on and off. And they go, wow,
it's
that
magic.
was easy.
Kind of blows a lot of people's minds the first time they see that happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And it's one of those, the difference, I guess, is that, I mean, you're still putting the work into the configuration. The difference is you're doing it from the convenience and comfort of your own office instead of hanging out at a transmitter site in a snowstorm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look at the back of my racks now, and there's far more Ethernet than there is anything else anymore.
Oh yeah, that's the days of analog control. You know, I loved a VRC 2000. It was the bomb back in the day. But now I walk into a site with a VRC 2000 and go, why?
Was it the MRC 16 that said ouch if you hit it with too much signal?
Yes, it was. That was actually, I had that remote at at KAXE, the very first station I worked at, and every time I punched played on it, sign on, it said ouch. I always thought that was amusing.
Yes, John, that was the note that I wanted to bring up, was the fact that one cable does a lot of stuff that we used to run, you know, a couple of 25 pairs for. So thank you very much for that.
No more punch blocks, no more D connectors, no more.
Right. All righty. Now, let's see, where am I on this? Clicking next slide. Of course, we've never not run out of time. I really feel wrong to mess with a perfect record now. But so Josh, this is getting into some of your stuff now, isn't it?
No.
No? Okay, this is still one of mine. This is
This is automat screen, actually. Yeah, so this is in
good.
That's all Shane, yeah.
So this is in ScriptEasy, where you basically import the MIBs for the transmitters. And here, you can see it loading up a Nautel VS300 MIB.
Yeah, and so on this one, again, it's just a matter of once you import the MIBs, then you just go through and select the things that you want to monitor or control, and I mean, build your interface, and that will vary from one device to the next, one manager to the next. So this is Josh's page. I knew it was here somewhere.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's mine.
So tell me a story. I mean, this is a big confusing screen with a lot of stuff on it that scares me.
It is a big confusing screen, yes. Now, the base, and I did it this way on purpose because it eliminated having to send 3 separate images. You know, Snmp and a Burk is set up through AutoLoad+, which is the free programming utility that comes with all the Burk stuff. And basically, you click on the, I believe it's the edit menu. It's either edit or tools, I can't remember. But there, it is the same place that you go to add a +X device. If you're familiar with Burk, all of the Burk peripherals are +X devices, and you have to go in and tell it, add at this IP address, and it populates everything else. And it says, oh, okay, this is what I am. Do you want to map these channels? Under the same menu, you go to Snmp devices, and it takes you to the first layer of screen that you can see on this slide, where it says Snmp devices, click add, edit, delete. So you click add or edit, and it brings up the top layer of this screen, which is Snmp device. Name, you can call it whatever you want. In this case, it was a TV install, and it says N+1 aux. The IP address of whatever your agent is, port number on the Burk, you can actually change it to whatever port you want. So if you've got a bunch of other stuff going on port 161 and you want to keep it clear on the network, you can change to something else. I never have, but you can. The Snmp version on this particular one, we chose version 2C. Version 1 was what we tested with just to make sure it would communicate, and it did work. The only security you've got is your read-write strings, and that was just, you know, you see, if you look at the Snmp devices, all 3 of the devices that are on there, I made the read-write strings different. And the second one, it was still public. For some reason, that never got changed. But we changed the main for the one station and the aux to something different. And then we had to pick the base MIB for it to look at, because this particular manufacturer had 37 different MIBs that you could pick from for those transmitters. Yes, that was not a fun day sorting through all of those to get what I needed. So then once you have that, you click OK, and that device is there. On the Burk, you can also set the poll rate at the bottom. You can adjust that as low as 1 second or as high as, I think, once a minute, where it would actually poll. Why you would only ever want to poll a transmitter once a minute is beyond me, but you have the ability to do that. So
well, and again, that may be a bandwidth. You'd have to really be bandwidth limited, because these things, as Shane mentioned, don't use hardly any bandwidth.
Yeah, it's very lightweight. It's just ASCII text. So yeah.
Oh, one other thing, and this comes back to the V2 and the plain text passwords. Definitely, again, a little bit of security is required.
Yeah.
Two comments here. One about software versions. Yeah, I went back a firmware version and the Snmp still locks. Don't even know which one of our boxes that was, but it does. Depending on the variation, the latest version for most is fairly stable, and hoping to have good news very, very shortly, but I'm not committing to anything else until I actually see it shipping. So there you go. That's Jeff's new opinion on all this stuff. Jerry Olson mentions he's still running an MRC 1600. I still do see a few of them out in the field. I mean, and there's
kill
nothing
those things.
more.
They just kept running.
No, you can't. Yeah.
Well, and so the first earlier AMs we built, originally the forward power sample went from 0, it was about 12.5 volts at full power. And unless you thought to pad that down with a voltage divider before you connected it, you'd turn on the transmitter and the MR16 would be ouch, and it was awesome. I mean, it was, anyway. So
Josh, was it the VRC 2500 where if it had an over voltage on one of the inputs, it would keep calling you and you could not stop it no matter what you did?
Yes.
Yeah, it just go into a panic loop.
Right.
And basically like, ow, ow, ow.
Exactly.
All right, Josh, moving forward. So we got I threw two together on this one. I forget why, probably because you gave them similar file names and I assumed they belong together, but you know what they say about assuming.
That was a correct assumption. This is the command setup in auto load. So if you want to map a command via SNMP, when you go to command channel, you click on the management, you tell it the source, which is SNMP, and then it shows you your raise on and raise off and your lower on and lower off. Typically for a toggle situation where raise and lower are controlling the same thing, you don't usually use the off. I've never actually done an install where I've used all 4 of those positions. But if you, okay, so when you want to raise the channel, you click the little 3 dots and it brings up the second screen on here, which is the command binder, where you pick your device, you pick your OID out of the MIB, or you paste it in there. And then the data type on a command is typically an integer or a string. I've run into mostly integers where you're changing the value of the integer as a set command to tell it this, you know, if I send you a 1, you're going to turn it on. If I send you a 2, you're going to turn it off. There are so many different things you can do with this, whether it's increment a counter or, you know, change an IP address. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do that we in the broadcast world typically don't do, but this is situated in such a way that you could use it in an IT environment and have it do other things on your network. You can also change it. You can also have it change status value, set a meter channel value. There's all kinds of stuff. Right. Basically, once those things are set, you click OK, and then it goes back and it looks like the first screen. And then you've now mapped your command channels.
And this comes down to one of those, if you looked at that OID in a browser, say and I'll use the iReasoning browser as a good example, but it would give you down in the description usually a little text line that says 1 for on, 2 for off, as an example.
Right. Assuming the MIB was written properly, yeah.
And that's the big thing. There are lots of really badly written MIBs. And unfortunately, I think we've all encountered many of them. So yeah.
I'd like to say no, but we've improved a lot. Let's just go there.
All right, well then we'll say Shane and I, through all the different devices, we've encountered very many badly written MIBs. So
and that is a really good point. In a lot of cases, the same OID. I mean, for any specific function, you might have one OID for the same thing. It might be power adjust, and 1 is raised, 2 is lower. You know, depending again on the specific, it might be they give you 2 different OIDs, 1 for raise, 1 for lower.
Well, we run into that a lot in status monitoring. On those TV installs, every amplifier had 4 different statuses, and it was the same OID, and it was 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 was off. And it was good, warning, default alarm, and then one was off. And I'm like,
Nice.
wait, one is off. If it's off, it can't return a value. That's really stupid. And that's kind of where we left it. So I was basically, if nothing's there, it shows it as off. But so that's the key of the OID. The other thing is to be critical to make sure that you're looking at the correct device. Because if you've got multiple of the same type of transmitter or the same manufacturer of transmitter, you pick the wrong device, you put the OID in. Well, on a Burk, the device determines which transmitter or which IP address it looks at. So it's very easy if you're not paying attention to, say you're wanting to work on the third device in the list, but you forget to change that. You put the OID in there for a command and you click on, and it turns your aux transmitter on instead of your main transmitter. I actually did that once, and I beat my head against the wall for about 30 minutes until I realized, oh, I have to change this drop down.
Well, and so the only difference is, and I'm going to date myself here, but going back a million years to 66 blocks and 50 pair cable, you just virtually flip a pair of wires.
The off by one error.
Right. Yeah, or you punch half a pair onto another half a pair and wonder where the buzz is coming from.
Yeah.
So, this is just the current modern equivalent of it.
Yep,
so
that's exactly right.
One is going to be Obi-Wan for me forever. Just so you know. William Bohn mentions one facility that still uses ARC-16s. I used Autopilot, not Autoload, to set up the SNMP, but it could only read parameters and not issue commands. Will Autoload still run with the ARC-16?
I don't believe so. If you're doing SNM, I don't.
The ARC-16 has no Ethernet, so.
No, the only way to monitor an ARC-16 with Autopilot is over the serial connection.
Right.
And if there's any SNMP monitoring being done, that's being done directly in Autopilot. So Autoload will only work with an ArcPlus, and for SNMP, it will only work with an ArcPlus Touch or an SL. Right. So no, that I don't see a configuration where that would work in order to be able to effectively use SNMP, because the SNMP manager is actually in the device. And if I'm intrigued on how that's even working, because I didn't think Autopilot had native SNMP monitoring built in. So
Darren says ARC-16s have a web interface as well, but you have to use an older version of the software on Flash, not SNMP compatible.
Yeah. I remember that. I had one of those, and it went in the dumpster about a year ago. And
external device,
so
right?
a little side note, the little side note, our app to get past the Flash and the AUI for the moment would probably let you get into that as well.
I don't know that it would, because that was such an old version of Java. It wasn't Flash. It was all Java based. And it was such an old version because it was the same. The web interface for the GSC was the same way. Yep. And you could use it to connect Autopilot to, but you couldn't get into it. If it was on your network and it was set up, you couldn't get into the web interface to set parameters like IP addresses or passwords or anything. But if it was set up, you could still connect Autopilot to it. But if it wasn't set up, it was a boat anchor. And that's why it went in the garbage.
So how about making an external manager like SolarWinds or Zabbix talk to something like the Burk ArcPlus? Shifting gears a little bit there.
So the ArcPlus cannot function as an agent.
Right.
That is one of the functions that I know that it cannot do, because I had that discussion with support a couple of months ago. So no, you would not be able to monitor a Burk with another SNMP manager.
So that comes back to what we were talking about with Shane with the one of the features.
Yeah, in the case of the automats, that you can, in fact, it is unique in that it is an agent and a manager.
So, and that's a feature that I have requested. I don't know if it ever went on the roadmap, but that was a feature that I had requested, is could you make this do this? And
Here's a good question from Roy. Is there, asking if we had time? Of course we have time. We make time. The clock is just a suggestion. It's like a
It's
speed
just a
limit.
number. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Say it's like the speed limit on I-5. It's just a suggestion. I picked that one because Shane, of course, is Western now. Way Western. He far west as opposed to just west. But what about devices that can convert older gear for SNMP? Like, is there?
Oh,
I mean, obviously, there's
absolutely.
quite a few of the IP-based remote controls are SNMP controllable and hardwired to older equipment, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we actually were playing around with a couple of devices. I think they were called the Atom, like something data acquisition module that basically would take discrete values like, like either a digital input or a metering input, analog metering input, and provide outputs, relay outputs as well, and convert all of that to SNMP. So it's certainly an option. You certainly can connect something to your older devices to use SNMP. And essentially that's what things like the Burk and the Automat remote controls do. But there are also any number of third-party devices that you could accomplish that with as well. If you wanted to use like a third-party manager back at your studios or something to control them that way.
Well, and if you've got the scripting and coding skills, there are adapters that will let you monitor serial parameters.
Yeah,
and you can if you've got the skills to be able to know what you have to monitor in that serial string, and it's constantly spitting out a serial string as your monitor, you can set SNMP parameters and it will write a MIB for you based on that. So if you want to monitor an older device like a Z or something like that, where you can have it spit out the serial from it, you can get one of these serial to SNMP converters and write the conversion script in there and then interface it to whatever you want. There's all kinds of stuff out there to do this. It's just a matter of having the knowledge to be able to do it.
Yeah, and Josh, I don't know which equipment you were talking about earlier that you used for doing things like Modbus and other serial protocols to SNMP, but there's a company that I've used called Control Systems Inc. that actually make
Control Systems Minnesota is
in Minnesota.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's who we're using for a lot of these industrial things, because they make converters to go from anything to anything. I remember I found their website one day. I wasted like 3 hours. I'm like, this is awesome.
There's also another company called Control by Web that makes some pretty cool little devices as well.
Yes, we do a lot with Control by Web. We're developing some products that are going to be based on some of their stuff.
So one other quick back to the Burk. Was told that Burk had a software add-on to allow it to function as an agent.
I don't know anything about that at this point.
Oh, well, there you go.
It may be a firmware update. I can check with support, but the last we talked, it wasn't there yet.
So Randy, I'm going to defer that one. I'll get Josh to dig the answer up to that and let me know, and then I'll send you an email and let you know. And he mentions using CSI Minnesota products as of far back as 2001. So they're not a new company either.
No, they've been around a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mr. Disembodied Voice is sending me time checks in the background, like that's going to make a difference.
Nobody cares, Ed. Nobody cares.
I got no
All right. Tiptoeing forward, back to your Burk setup.
Yes. What am I looking at here? I am looking at, this is a status channel. Same type of thing. In auto load, you go to the status, you click the 3 dots, it brings this up, you tell it set by SNMP, choose your device, choose your OID, and then typically in our world, we're matching to a value. And this is one of the ones that I was talking about where you choose match to a value, where 5 is, this was a liquid cooled rig. 5 was main coolant output temperature is okay. The biggest drawback that you run into on a lot of these is creating an abbreviation that will fit in the text box.
Right.
And this was like, some of these were so convoluted that I assigned them and I went back 3 days later and looked at it, I'm like, what does that mean?
I've had the same problem. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you just kind of go, oh, all right. Yeah, I think that's what that is.
T1 SIG FLT. What?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what I was on when I wrote that, but I meant something.
But the cool thing about this is the calculate value is you actually, once you put the match to value in there and you have your OID and you click calculate value, it will return the value and then it will read to you what you put in as the status descriptor. So you can verify, okay, is this reading correctly? Am I getting the return that I'm expecting? Because if the raw value is a 4 and your match to value is a 5, it will come back and read main coolant temp not okay, which is the negative of that. Well, then you change it to a 4 and then it will give you whatever the positive of that specific channel is. So this is another one of those cases where the OID for 4 channels might be the same, but the value that it's matching is different. And those are the things you have to keep track of, because if you just go in and look at the SNMP list, you're going to see, well, all these OIDs are the same. So what's the difference? And you actually have to go into this screen to determine what the differences are.
So one quick point along the lines of matching these values. So unlike when you're dealing with an analog sample, you don't actually need to calibrate per se, but sometimes these values come out in very strange ways, not necessarily in the format that you want. So that you'll have to do something to account for the format that it comes out in when you're talking about.
I'll tell you about the day he wired up the SNMP to his shiny new GV10 and discovered that we measure the forward power in milliwatts.
Everybody does that. I ran into the same thing. That's probably the next slide is the metering channel. I don't know if you put that in here or not.
If you sent me the picture, I included it. So yep.
That's where.
Sorry, I'm going to throw a little side. Yep. I'm going to throw a quick side note in here for Ed. Matt Golston has included a big, long Amazon link in chat for a serial to Ethernet converter that he says works good on the VRC 2500. So Ed, if I could get you to copy that into chat, that would be awesome. Thank you. All right, and moving forward, there we go.
There we go. Shane, you can continue now. Yeah. So no, same type of thing. You set it up the same way. You pick your OID. The only difference is you've got to pick your multiply by, and you look at the raw value. This was a TV transmitter. The output power is 42.364 kilowatts. Well, the whole thing's in milliwatts, and you look at that and go, that's a really big number, and you have to pick the appropriate multiply by. Many of them are positive, many of them are negative. Obviously, this one was negative so that we could move the decimal point to the left and get the reading that you expect. But again, the calculate value makes a big difference, even if you don't understand the multiplier values. Pick from the drop down, you'll be able to figure it out pretty quick just based on what your reading shows. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm measuring forward power on a 10 kilowatt transmitter and it says 100,000, that's
exactly.
the first hint that things are not exactly the way it should be.
Yeah, 42,364,000. Wait, that's not right.
Yeah. So, okay, we copied that file. We'll skip over that. So, like I said earlier on, for us, if you go to latest software on the website, then just click your way through and head for the root directory until you get to the one that says SNMP MIBs, and I've included the breakdown of the, I think I might even have, that might not be the newest one. I may have to update that. But yeah, I mean, you can get to it on the website. We break it down, as you can see here with the SNMPs, when you click into it, it will break it down by model number. So we're not hitting you with 37 files at once.
Thanks.
We try. Some days we try harder than others. And then we get to, and this comes back to PRTG and how you configure it. And this is where it's almost easier to buy a pre-made versus roll your own, because setting up the interfaces on, and I'm going to pick on the Burk, but that or the Automat, I mean, it's a lot more drag and drop, whereas this, you literally have to tell it, I want a rotary dial speedometer type screen with this minimum and this maximum, and this is the unit display.
Well, I mean, it's the same way in the Burk.
Yeah,
you define all those parameters. And you tell it where to go, you tell it what size you want it to be, you tell it what the colors you want it to be are, how often you have tick marks, how big those tick marks are, what the value, I mean, you define all of that the same way. The only difference is if you want 5 of them, once you make one, you can copy it and then just change what it's connected to. And
Yeah.
that's the joy there. In PRTG, I don't remember if there's a way to copy a meter, or if you actually just have to format one for every single parameter.
Not easily. There are some things, and I mean, again, I've only worked the free version. I've never worked the paid version. So, as you go up in levels, maybe the features add.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip past all of your animations. Whoops, there, that was all your animations. Okay.
That was all my animations.
So this comes back to what we were talking before about the default community strings and some security. And Shane, this is something that you'd mentioned too. Absolutely not on the public network. Not unless it's buried behind it.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's your preference? VPN, VNC? Do you care?
I prefer VPN because it allows me more direct access from inside my network. I mean, having a machine out there with something like, some kind of remote access tool on it works just as well. I mean, it really comes down to your preference. But in my opinion, having it up on a VPN makes it a little more flexible. So.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So again, we're running past the top of the hour as always. Definitely the gotchas, and we talked about reassigning ports earlier, and that being a challenge because some devices will let you and some won't. So it's probably not a recommended practice. But what other gotchas can you think of off the top of your head? Josh, closing remarks in the last minute or so.
Oh my. Come back to me. I'll have to think about that.
All right, Shane, you're better under pressure.
As always, the firewall configurations are going to come into play here. Sometimes even if you do have a VPN up, if you're dealing with like a corporate firewall type of structure, they may block SNMP in some areas, so you may have to talk to them about that. Generally, it's wide open, but there are some areas where you might find it blocked at some point along the path. So.
Any difference in your experience on like university firewalls, where I know they can get persnickety about
Yeah,
that?
university and corporate tends to be a little bit more strict about that because they know about the vulnerabilities of SNMP and they tend not to open it where it doesn't need to be. So.
Yeah. All right. So obviously make a plan, follow the plan. That was today's little social media prompt on my Tuesday tips and tricks too, I think, if I remember right. I could be wrong. That might have been yesterday's, who knows. But so for me, I am a big drawing out flowcharts kind of guy when it comes to this stuff. Josh, what's your preference for laying this sort of thing out?
We do a lot of it in, honestly, just in Excel. We've figured out a good format there on, this is what you're monitoring, this is your OID, this is what it's connected to, and this is what channel it is on your remote control. And then those are broken down based on IP addresses of whatever the agents are and things like that. We do a lot of our control mapping in Excel. There have been instances where we have done it in either a Wirecard or Visio or something like that, but it ends up getting busy, and we can keep it cleaner with text in a spreadsheet. So that's kind of where it's in. My tip is learn your MIBs. And if you have devices and you're trying to do them and for some reason your manager doesn't want to talk to it, download iReasoning, look at it, figure out why. If it's all in tables, nothing's going to read it, and you're going to have to learn how to hunt and pack. That was what I did. Alex can attest to the day that we dug into the first round of that install in Florida that lasted 2.5 years, and he and I were both banging our heads against the wall. So yeah.
So
yeah, and I'll echo that. Yeah, same thing. Know your MIBs.
Let's see. Sean Mattingly, can you show me one working example of how you set up a new device to work with SNMP in a manager program? Josh, I think I'm probably going to put you directly in touch with Sean for that. Sean's over in Indiana.
Yeah, I know Sean.
Okay, and that's something that would be good topic to do, and we sort of tried to do that. The challenge is that different managers work different ways, and as we've discussed with the MIB configuration, although it should be standardized, different devices work different ways too.
Yeah.
And Tony Peterly, I almost
Hi, Tony.
need to open, yeah, Tony's here. But he does make the mention, and Tony, I don't know if you caught it, but we had Script Easy in there earlier. Script Easy can handle tables.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Yes,
so
it can.
there you go. So if you've got a device that runs tables, call Tony. And there you go. On that note, the usual online information, this webinar, as with all our webinars, does get archived. Waves newsletter, I believe there was one just came out very recently. I know Fiona was after me about content. I think it's already been released. YouTube channel. If you are looking on how to do something that you think should be, it's like, why can't I figure this out? It's so simple. Then a lot of times you can go to our YouTube channel, and if customer service has gotten that same request a bunch of times, they probably made a little how-to video on it. Marco Reedy makes a good point in here in closing. Some MIB files are available from the equipment itself, like the Innovonics mod monitor.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is a really good point. Some gear does have the MIBs preloaded in it, so packaged, I guess, with it. So on that note, I want to drop a special thank you to Josh Bohn from the MaxxKonnect group. I have trouble saying that, but I'll get it right. I spelled it right anyway.
You did. Thank you.
For those that don't know, we had this little thing going on Facebook the other day where somebody had spelled connect with a C, which I don't know why they would follow.
And it's somebody that worked for me. So
yeah, so that makes it even better. And anyway, so Josh, thank you very much for your time. And Shane Toven from EMF and the far west of the United States. Thank you. I guess Hawaii would technically be the far west.
That's the distant west.
There you go. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you both very much for your time. And folks, thank you for spending the last hour and 15 minutes with us. And we hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time. Bye now.